What's up, podcast people? Yeah, it's Greg. I'm here with some news. Let's do this. Well, there's no crowdfunding chronicles this week, but we do have a hot list of features for you folks to check out. So first of all, I'm just going to give you a quick rundown. There was the Fists of Fury, Organized Crime and Futility in Yakuza Kiwami. And so you want to start an atelier, a couple of the ones I mentioned in the past, just to remind you, they're there, go check those out. We have Memories of Midgar, our favorite moments from the mechanical metropolis of Final Fantasy VII. A bunch of our staff kind of weigh in with the Final Fantasy VII Remake having come out and how it focuses so heavily on Midgar. They look back on some of their favorite moments in those opening moments from the original Final Fantasy VII, back in 1997. We've got Finding Lost Jerusalem, why you should play Xenosaga. It's an article by, you guessed it, Tyler Trosper, and you can go give it a read to see why he's so passionate about the series and why you could become so passionate about it. If you just dive in, dip your toes in, read his article, see if it's worth it. Another reminder, Man Must Own the World, Final Fantasy XIV, Gaius von Balsar, and the Praetorium Speech, that beautiful analysis of one of A Realm Reborn's big antagonists by Joe, is up as well. And then, Even If Our World Seems Meaningless, Yoko Taro's plea for universal empathy in Nier is another really well thought out, in-depth look at Nier by Zach Wilkerson. Over in the reviews department, we got a few of those for you. Nathan Lee was in Sakura Wars, and he talks about it on this episode. Overall, he seems pretty pleased with it, and it's anime as heck. And this little action RPG visual novel rebirth of a classic series seems worth getting into, so go give his article a read. And keeping up with the topical reviews, which we also discuss in the episode, pretty much all the reviews actually we discuss on this episode. Spoilers. I gave RPG Fan Editor's Choice to the Trials of Mana remake that came out not too long ago. It was awesome. Go check out what I had to say about it. There's also a partner video review that came out at the same time as well, so if you want to get more eyes and ears on it than just reading, you got that option as well. Finally, Wintermoor Tactics Club dropped, and Neal Chandran has given it a review as well. All three of these games seem pretty stellar across the board and all worth checking out, and you will hear more about them in the episode proper. Finally, we dropped a big old video review of the Yakuza Remastered Collection, taking all of Jono's 3 entries from the remaster of Yakuza and smashing them all into one big video for you to watch. So if you want to see the highlights from all of those games crammed into this little kind of brief microcosm of all of his reviews, then go give that a watch. So one last thing before we get into the episode proper, you may have noticed that our podcasts have taken on kind of a new look. It's because we switched over how we're delivering our podcasts to you. So first of all, your newsfeed may or may not work out just fine. Most services seem to be taking things automatically and updating them just fine. But for those of you having any issues, we recommend you unsubscribe and then resubscribe. Make sure you're looking for the proper RPG Fan podcast. It's RPG Fan with no space in it. Our old feed used to have a space in it, but we're phasing that out hopefully, so it shouldn't really be an issue. So if you search RPG Fan, all as one word, that should hopefully bring things up to date for you as well. And as far as that, most things will tell you when a podcast is available, and hopefully you'll be able to stay up to date. But if you do have any issues, please email me at podcast@rpgfan.com so we can sort that out. We've also added a boatload of new platforms, and for those of you who have been asking, yes, we are now on Spotify, along with a whole bunch of other stuff, so go check out our new updated podcast pages to see all the different services we are now on additionally, over the original ones that we were on. And finally, we got a nice little embedded player on the website now, so you don't have to download it or go off to a separate place if you're just taking it from the website directly, which is just a really nice little usability thing. So, at any rate, our wonderful fearless leader, Mike Salvato, has put all of this information in a much more thought-out news article for you, so you don't have to try and remember everything I'm saying. You can find that on the website. It is in our news archive for 2020. If for some reason you're listening to this way late and have missed the boat somehow, it's article 10399, and you can go track that down through our archives. At any rate, we hope that this new podcast experience really makes everything better for you when you're trying to take in all the various RPG Fan podcasts. And we are moving into the new future. The new future? Because that's what the future is. Shut up, Greg. Just let the podcast happen. Okay, enjoy it. 188. That's the one. 188. Hello, everybody. I just tried like a weird Doppler effect, so that way it didn't do the thing like I always done, where I come in way too hot at the beginning, and I just kind of like leaned into the mic. Hopefully you all enjoyed that. I don't know what it'll sound like. We'll hear in the edit. Anyways, welcome to Random Encounter 188. I'm Greg Delmage, your host that you're stuck with, because nobody else wants to do it. I'm kidding. I love doing this, and it's pretty awesome, because I get to talk to sweet people like my co-host, Jono Logan.
Always a pleasure.
Hello, Jono. Welcome back. I'm glad to hear you're doing all right. What with current events happening out east Canada?
Yeah. That was. It means I've been talking to my parents fairly regularly about it.
It's very unheard of in Canada. I mean, it happens. It just doesn't happen as big.
Well, hopefully, it happens less now that we have the assault ban.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it seems like a good way to deal with it. But that is a very different podcast to talk about all that. Still, I'm glad you and yours are all doing all right.
Yes, we're all fine.
Wake of all that. Good. And otherwise, we are joined from Toronto. There we go. That's how I'm going to spin it, everybody. Joined from Toronto by Nathan Lee, everybody. Nathan, welcome back.
Hey, good to be back.
It's always good to have you. Also, back on the podcast from, I guess we'll get him to regale us with the story as to whenever the last podcast he remembers being on was. But the man who gets us so many codes, talks to all of the folks that want us to review things for us, hopefully, is Neal Chandran.
How's it going, everyone? And and I think the last podcast I was on was Retro Encounter when we were doing the feature on our favorite RPG casts, ensemble casts.
Oh, right. Nice. Who was yours?
Final Fantasy VII.
That's a good one and very topical. Have you gotten into the remake yet?
No, I haven't yet because I do not have a PlayStation 4 yet.
Well, there we go, Neal. It's really good to have you on. As I was saying in the pre-show, I've known Neal since I started at the site, and I've gotten many a review code thanks to Neal's hard work and keeping in touch with all the developers and publishers out there. But I've never actually gotten to talk voice to voice, face to face, however you want to put it, with Neal. So this is exciting times. First time really chatting with Neal, who's a bass and bike enthusiast, as I recall. Not motorcycle, bicycle.
This is true.
And in that we are kindred spirits. As far as the bike cycling goes, but I don't think I'm near as passionate about it as you are. But it gets me places, so that's what I'm happy about. Not right now, though, because no one's going nowhere. At any rate, where we are going is into the land of video games. We've all been playing stuff. We've all been getting through this whole global pandemic and these times at the moment. And a lot of that, is being able to put times into games. Although I can't say as I've had as much time as I would like to play video games. I thought I'd be like a lot lazier, and I'm not. I'm still keeping very busy around the house. As people who have been listening know, I'm also homeschooling my daughter, swapping in and out with the wife this week. My wife roped me into doing a 48-hour film competition with her this week through her work. Those will go live at some point. I'm sure I'll share it with everybody. So we basically made a film, just the two of us in the house, in 48 hours, and it was a lot. Yeah, I'm finding ways to keep busy, and a lot of it doesn't involve video games. What about you guys? Are you finding it's mostly video game times for you, or are you finding other side projects and skills you never knew you had? Take it away, Jono.
I'm a freelance writer, so thankfully I still have work. I'm still writing on a regular basis. In between that and playing quite a few games, and I kind of am looking at this as like get through the backlog, and I have been hammering away at it, and I've gotten through quite a bit of it, and God only knows how much longer this is going to last. I might actually make it through a little bit more of it before it's all over.
For a second, I thought you were going to say, like, I actually might make it through my backlog before this is all
God.
over. And I was like, don't you lie. And then you're like, I might make it through a little bit more of it. I was like, that's more honest.
No, there's no way in hell that I'm getting through my Steam library, and not to mention my Epic library, because they keep releasing great games for free, and they're just piling up.
It's a good bad problem to have, I guess. Nathan, you're also stuck with the whole family gaggle at home, but you were saying like, your parents are keeping busy, and you and your sister kind of hang out and stuff too as best you can. So is it mostly again video games for you, or have you taken on some new hobbies?
Still mostly gaming for me. Like, I've been trying to knock out all my assignments as quickly as I can, and
Right.
it's basically what has really been keeping me busy throughout this whole thing. I'm trying to find some stuff on the side to do, like playing some of the games with friends online, but that's about it.
Well, at least you're keeping yourself busy. And Neil, have you been knocking out some sweet bass licks?
Yep. I mean, for my day job, I'm an educator, so, I spend my mornings, e-teaching my students and everything, but yeah, a lot of my free time is spent getting better at playing bass. While my computer was out, I was also catching up on my reading backlog, which I'm making a serious dent in, and well, I can, and since I got a new laptop, I can play more video games again too.
He's
Yay!
back, everybody. He's back. Yeah, it's not easy to be an educator in these times. Like I appreciate like our daughter's teacher. She touches base about 2 or 3 times a week. They use Microsoft Teams right now and kind of conference call all the students. Which for kids in grade 4, that just sounds like trying to herd cats. And it just sounds like a nightmare to try and put this together and keep it all structured. And especially for this teacher, this was her first assignment as like a full-time, like not just being a part-time on-call teacher anymore. And it's just like, cool, now you have to teach in a pandemic, have fun. And so yeah,
Yeah.
she's doing really good, but it can't be easy, I imagine.
Definitely. And I work with special ed high school students,
Oh man.
and so so we have a lot of unique challenges, especially some of the students we have to be kind of hand over hand when we're working with them. But you know what? For the most part, they've proven a lot more like resilient than I thought possible. And yeah, for the most part, you know, they're doing what they need to do. A lot of them have like either a parent or an older sibling who's home with them and can kind of be our eyes and ears.
And like more power to those people too. Like I
Yeah.
appreciate, like even for myself, I don't know how my daughter gets anything done at school because she's so easily off track all the time that like I'm constantly on top of her to be like, hey, focus. Hey, you've been staring off into the distance for like 10 minutes. Like, let's do math again, maybe. Anyways, it's ridiculous.
Sounds like conversations I have with 90% of my students.
Well, exactly, right? And then when they are on topic, it's great. And then it's not long before like, so you know what happened in Minecraft? And you're like, this is not French literature. Let's get back to this. Okay, cool. Yeah, I appreciate the hard work you're putting in. It can't be easy in these times.
Frankly, I wish both of you were here to keep me on track with my job, because I'm often staring into space. It'd be great if someone was like, hey, come on, write some blogs, write some blogs.
Poor Jana. What's your partner do? I guess she's busy. Isn't she working as well, Jana?
Yeah, she is working from home too, but she occasionally goes out and does site inspections. She works. She
Yeah.
doesn't. Yeah, she works for a conservation authority.
Oh, okay. So yeah, she can't keep you honest either if she's busy doing her own thing.
No, she's constantly she's working away like crazy, and I am in here playing Bravely Default and Yakuza.
I feel that sometimes too. I mean, my wife has reduced hours, but even there's days where I'm just like, oh, I just kind of played 2 hours of Animal Crossing, and here we are. And she's like, cool, I put together a proposal to the government to get a grant for this pitch that I've been writing when developing the series with these 3 other women. And then we're trying to pitch this series and hope it goes through. And oh my gosh. And I'm like, I watered some flowers. It's been great. I mean, I've been keeping track of the house and stuff. I pressure washed the house yesterday. Pressure washing is fun, y'all. At any rate, video games. That's what we're here for. We just jibber jabbered for a bit about our personal lives, which I hope everyone appreciates. I mean, you come back to the podcast for a reason. It's totally us, not the video games, right? Right? Anyways, one big release that just came out was Trials of Mana. It, as of the last episode that dropped, I probably could have talked about it just in then, but I hadn't really gotten too deep into it enough yet. So this came out last Friday, if I'm not mistaken. Yes, last Friday, Trials of Mana 2020 version dropped, a remake of the SNES classic from 1995 that we only just got in 2019 legally. I mean, if there's means people were playing it before that, but the official localization.
That was a fast turnaround time on the remake. Whew. They got right on
Right?
that. They released the 16-bit version, and bam, they got the remake out quick.
Well, exactly. Like it speaks to the fact that probably ever since the Collection of Mana was announced originally in Japan, they were probably already developing this remake, and then and had the localization in store.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm wondering if they were just like, let's just put it over here and release this in English because we already have the other two games localized in English. So it'll print money, and it did. So it just kind of made sense. But yeah, getting that announcement at E3, both that the game was available for the first time ever and that they're remaking it and it actually looked like a good remake was it was a good move on their part.
I believe Solosi almost passed out when they actually announced that.
Oh, exactly. And he will tell you about it every time you ask. And I would have been in his shoes if I was even there at the event doing the same thing. It's there was a lot of trepidation, obviously, going into this review for myself, and just the news that's been leaked because the Secret of Mana remake was not so great back in 2017. It was just kind of throw a 3D slap of paint over top of it, and we're good to go. Not so much. People wanted to see some innovation and some good quality of life stuff, and that just wasn't given to us. So with Trials of Mana, they seem to have gotten the message, because this game is just... The thing that makes it is the fact that they rebuilt the core systems from the ground up, so in such a way that it still feels like the original experience, but refined. And that's exactly what needed to happen.
Yeah, which is nice to hear, because, I mean, they put so much work into the English localization. You would hope that they would maintain it.
Well, exactly. So the fact that we've got it in any shape and form is a miracle, and it's great. So I was overjoyed to be able to play this game. It is just fun. Like, if anyone remembers just being a kid, picking up a video game and just losing yourself and just having a good time with your friends and stuff, like, this is that game again. I mean, I said it as such in my review at the tail end of it, but that's just what I felt the whole time. I just was enjoying myself thoroughly.
The Mana series is great for that, I find. Like, in terms of their RPGs, Final Fantasy and Saga, Mana is the kind of thing you can just jump right into and play and enjoy.
You're so pretentious.
Mana. Trails of Mana.
Yeah, because I remember playing the original Secret of Mana, like the 16-bit version, and just the world was so colorful. It's like it was a world you wanted to get lost in.
Absolutely. It's its biggest appeal, like between the simplicity of the story, which part of that was because of just the localization and what they were able to do. But yeah, the world is just so... It's what you picture when you just picture magical world. It's bright, it's colorful, it's vibrant, it's easy to just go right into, right? And it's just a wonderful experience. And the second Densetsu 3, now Trials of Mana, was more of the same with a really cool refresh on the combat system and a bit more kind of a fleshing out of the story. And then now with the remake, they've embellished that so much more, mostly for the best. Yeah, like I really didn't have a lot to disparage. It was funny. I was reading through some of the response we got to the review through people when Steph does her beautiful recreations in her like little collector's card review card that she does on Instagram.
Oh, those are awesome.
Right? Oh my gosh. And we would get some feedback from folks, and it was all very good. And one of the people were saying, like, those cons are hardly cons. And I'm like, I know, but you just, sometimes you don't want to pick your favorite children, but you have a favorite. So you eventually have to nitpick and find something. And, I mean, you could take it from what you will. I mean, having some lackluster voice performances and poor video optimization is, it's not a big, none of it breaks the game. Right? But it's you still got to knock points somewhere because nothing's perfect either.
Yeah.
Have we ever reviewed a 100% game? I don't think so.
I don't think we have. And that's the problem. I mean, some people are so invested in the series or the game that if you point out any criticism at all about it, like if you point out that the voice acting's not quite right, it's like a personal hit against them. And the reality is that a brilliant game that is the game of the year will still have some things that aren't 100%.
Well, absolutely. And I mean, I didn't give it 90%, but I still, or higher, but I still found it. I gave it editor's choice because it's still a fantastic game to play and everybody should. It's not without its flaws, but it's amazing. It was just, like I said, just unbridled fun from start to finish. Like picking, I already knew what was kind of going on because I've played the original a few times through now. So I knew I got to make my party, but making the party is much more important now in terms of how it affects the story. Like there's the little touches they added with each of the characters have more personality now because they have more room to speak, and not just literal gigabytes of space more room, but also just they've filled out the story more to allow for more breathing room between the story beats in some ways. And then you have cutscenes and everything like that that kind of adds on to all of it, which your mileage may vary with due to the performances, as I said. But in between the moments, if anyone's played like Dragon Age or I guess even like Dragon Age, Mass Effect, they kind of are the staples for that, where the characters kind of have banter between them in between moments, and it kind of helps develop the fact that they actually have a relationship, which speaks to what we were kind of talking about was one of the flaws of Octopath Traveler a few episodes ago, that it seems like the characters don't have a relationship.
Yeah, they're in their own individual stories, and that's sort of it. There's really not a lot of crossover.
Well, exactly. Whereas each of these heroes, all 6 of them, have their own individual stories. And even then, each pair of them share a story, so to speak. So, for example, I had Hawkeye, who shares the same villain group as Reese. And in that, they still have their own separate arcs. Hawkeye is pursuing his own goal to save someone very important to him from certain death, whereas Reese has had somebody taken from her that means a lot to her. So within those 2 realms, they still have their own stories, but they interact with each other if you decide to put both of them in the party. So you still kind of are working through both their stories, and then they'll kind of banter about things in between. And some of it is poignant to the stories, which is, I think, a service to the storytelling. As any of us know, in your classic Nintendo RPGs and Super Nintendo RPGs, they weren't always the best at kind of guiding you to the next thing to do. Some are better than others. And then some could argue we went kind of hard the other direction by leaving too many breadcrumbs and feeling like your hand was held the whole way through. And I would say this one's a little guilty of that, I found, but at the same time, it means a lot less kind of running around and banging your head against walls by going like, which NPC will trigger the thing? So there's that, but it kind of takes a bit of the mystery out of it. At any rate, it's in between each of the story beats, the characters will kind of sum up stuff. So like, they're like, hey, so we now we're on our way to get this thing done, right? Yeah. What do we feel about this? And then each one will basically have a line about it, and it's kind of nice to make them feel like they care about the story and they're on board with it, and have a feeling towards the action that's happening at hand, right? And I thought that was probably the best addition to the game in terms of the storytelling aspect of it, because otherwise the story is pretty much the same. They didn't really add anything else aside from the post-game content, which we're not really allowed to talk about because Square Enix. But otherwise, yeah, they didn't really embellish the actual story too much, except these little characterization things. And that was the real thing I was looking for, is having these characters come that much more to life.
Yeah, and I mean, the base material of Trials of Mana was a very, very late era SNES game. It was only 2 years before Final Fantasy VII got released. And because of that, at least in my opinion, everything from the mechanics to the art style to the character interactions, everything is very much evolved from... It's pretty much on par with a PS1 game in terms of its mechanics, at least from what I've played of it.
Mm-hmm. Which is possibly why they bumped the localization of it, because they probably wanted to focus on developing for the PlayStation 1 at that point.
Yeah. I'm a little surprised they didn't port it, actually, now that I think about it.
Yeah, actually, it probably would have stood up, but maybe they were already developing Legend of Mana. Maybe they didn't want to step on their own toes.
Yeah, that was a smart decision.
Yeah, exactly. Legend of Mana was so good, in my opinion. And definitely married the two worlds really well, of the Super Nintendo vibe and the letting the PlayStation power back those much more enhanced graphics, even though they were all 2D. Like it's such a vibrantly lovely game. They didn't go into the 3D world until Dawn of Mana, which is basically... So, did anyone else unfortunately play Dawn of Mana on the PS2?
No, I missed it.
Nope.
No.
It's okay. You should all be happy you missed it. It was not... So this game was basically what I wanted Dawn of Mana to be. It's just, you wanted to be able to explore those worlds, like in Secret of Mana, like it was seamless, right? Like you could literally almost walk from one place to the other through all the little tiles, right?
Yeah.
So it was one big map. There was no like overworld map to get from location to location. If the places were landlocked, then you had to travel via Flammy or via Cannon, which will never get old. Um, and so it was all like this one tied together world. And then so when they tell you like you're gonna get this in 3D, you're like, yeah, please, because Legend of Mana, it went more to the overworld map thing, but then the worlds you went into themselves were still pretty huge and felt pretty much the same. So it still captured the vibe pretty well. Whereas when you get to Dawn of Mana, everything was a level. It was a stage. It was a self-contained stage, and they were granted decently sized, like maybe like Hyrule Field kind of size on like Ocarina of Time. Still pretty big and ample to explore and lots of levels, but they made it more like a very bad platformer action-y kind of game, and it lost a lot of its magic. And then coupled with the fact that they had like a lousy like leveling system that you only leveled to like max level 3 each stage, and then you had to re-level up when you went to like the next quote-unquote stage. It was just really dumb and backwards, and the story wasn't enough to keep it going. And so that was just a huge letdown. So seeing that world now truly come to life in 3D through Trials of Mana, it just makes it, for any Mana fan of the series, is just gonna like, you're gonna see this world. And I grant you, it definitely looks like a PlayStation 2 game that's been HD remastered, because it's simple in a lot of its design. But it's still so vibrant and colorful and beautiful, and just captures the right parts of the Mana series into the 3D world so perfectly. And I'm excited for people like Nathan, who is a very funny man, in that he doesn't really dig the sprite works in the 2D world of gaming, because that's not where he started. Such a baby. It makes me feel old. Anyways, so now I'm glad that you'll get to experience this game, because you'll probably actually want to play it.
No, I do. Like, I really want to get into Trials once I have the opportunity to. It just, like, it looks like a game I'll have a lot of fun with.
Oh, for sure. The tropes from it being a JRPG are all the more enhanced now that they have more active performances, so to speak. So that'll probably strike a chord with you as well.
Yeah, it should. So, I actually have to wait for the quarantine to end first, because I pre-ordered the store, and I'm just like, I want to go to the store and buy it, but I can't.
Oh, you want the physical?
Yeah, I always prefer physical if I can.
Oh, fair enough. So on top of that, it is just fun to play. Like, the combat system is awesome. As I mentioned in my review too, like there was broken stuff in the original one. Like the luck stack didn't work right, so you could actually like get critical hits increases through luck stat. Basically, luck only helped with like your treasure chest gains, and that was about it. And you couldn't use shields. So Duran, one of his light class path, basically goes into being a heavy tank, because he gets shields, so his defense just skyrockets. But there was no shields. Like, they didn't work properly. And I don't think they added anything to your defense stat. They were just kind of they just were there, and not even you could see them anyways. So it's awesome that now all these things work right. They refined the class system and the growth system. So now they dropped the agility stat. And instead, basically, when the old one, whenever you leveled up, you would get to assign a point into one of your governing stats, where up to a cap based on your class level, because there was the 1, 2, and 3 as the game goes. So now it's the same idea. Like, all your governing stats cap out, but you now kind of get perks within those stats, which is super cool. So it's a clearer trajectory, because in the old one, when you leveled up and changed your class level as well, you would get access to some new stats and new skills, but you never quite knew when they were going to unlock, unless you went and read like a playthrough and stuff like that. And people who had, figured it out and put it in their walkthrough, then you can figure it out that way. But now you can actually assign your points and know, like, oh, cool. So if I put 9 training points into my luck stat, I'll get this cool ability that now lets me find special items more often. And so you can equip that to your character. Plus, there's some of those abilities you can get that you can equip on anybody. So you don't have to just worry about one character being focused on one thing. You can it's very flexible. And that's what I loved about it. Like, the whole new system is much more customizable. Each character isn't quite as hemmed into exactly what they have to be. I mean, it's not like you can change their core skills and stuff. Like, if you're a magic user, you can't suddenly just learn healing magic from somebody else. That's not a thing. But at least you can make them, like, do you want them to get their special attacks more? Do you want them to be really good at landing critical hits? Do you want them to do more damage with their heavy attacks, or have the most magic damage that you do? So you can kind of build them and tweak them a bit that way, which I thought was really awesome.
Yeah, and not only that, I mean, you have so many characters to play with and so many different builds that you can create.
Well, exactly. and with all the class system, and now they've added the 4th tier classes as well, there's just a lot more expansiveness in the game in each of those class things, which is like the most fun part of that game, is starting up a new party and changing their classes.
Well, it seems like a game that already had a ridiculous amount of replay value now has more of it.
Yeah, and you can zip through it so fast. You can play through each of the characters' prologues if you don't want to jump into another replay, because originally that was the only way you could kind of know what the other characters were doing. So now when they join you, you have an option to say you can play through their prologue, so you can get the context of storylines that are outside of your character's storyline. It's such a good game, and I'm so excited for like people like Nathan who get to play it for the first time. Neal, you've played Secret of Mana. Did you ever play Second Densetsu 3 in any way, shape, or form?
No, I haven't, because I'll be honest, I was actually kind of a late comer into the SNES era of RPGs because I had a Sega Genesis during that era, so...
Boo.
You were one of those.
Yeah, I was a Phantasy Star kid. But anyway, it was in college. One of my friends, he had his SNES, and it was through him that I got into like Secret of Mana and a lot of that era of gaming.
Sega does what Nintendo don't, not play RPGs. We're all shell-shocked from the console wars.
It's the worst thing our generation ever went through.
Wars, yeah, right? Oh my gosh.
What's a Sega?
Oh God.
Yeah, I mean...
Get off my show.
Yeah.
I kid, though. At any rate, I am excited you both will be able to play this game, because it's just been refined so wonderfully, and you're just going to have a magical time with it. It's just so easy to play. So just go ham. Have fun. Listeners, play it. Like, really. Like, this is not going to be a bad investment. I can't speak to how well it does on the Switch. I'm slightly worried, because like I was saying, it's not well optimized for the PS4, which is weird, considering it doesn't... Like, as we had Alana on last episode saying that the Final Fantasy VII Remake is seamless and butter smooth on the PlayStation 4, and she might be playing on the Pro, I'm not sure.
I have heard the Switch has frame rate issues, and I hear that the PS4 or PC version is definitely better. So if you have the option for that, you should probably go for those. That's just what I've heard.
That's one of the tricks about being a reviewer, is like we get codes for the games, but we can't review it on every single system. And because we can't review it on every single system, and the experience is slightly different on each one because of optimization, or I guess just plain power when it comes to the Switch.
Control distribution or whatever.
Yeah, your mileage may vary depending on what you're driving.
Yeah, exactly.
Or especially if, you're reviewing the PC version of a game and it controls completely differently on a console.
So yeah, I had that experience when I was playing Thea: The Awakening, because I played it on Switch first and then realized it was a port of the PC game from many years before, and I picked it up on PC because I loved it so much, but I was like, I can clearly see this will handle better on PC. And yeah, it's night and day when you try and convert strategy PC controls to console, right?
And vice versa. Like, I remember when I was playing Oberdin on Switch, it was like, well, this is working, but it's not. It's clearly designed for a not this system.
But we have played more games than just Trials of Mana, such as Anime the Video Game. How's that been treating you, Nathan?
So, Anime the Video Game was pretty fun, and I always enjoy my anime, so, being able to play that was pretty awesome. I think I made some waves on Twitter with that, with my little quote there. I think I know you guys all loved it.
When did Sakura Wars drop?
Sakura Wars came out on the 28th of April, which, as of this recording, it was just a few days ago.
And it's that story's been around for a while, has it not been? Like it's a part of a series. I don't know much about it.
Again, I'll try and tell you as much as I can, because this is my first time playing a game from the series as well. So the series started in '96 on the Saturn, so that was already kind of. It's part of the reason why we haven't seen Sakura Wars.
No wonder you haven't heard of it.
Yeah, and also it was Japan only for the longest time. Like we only got a Sakura Wars game for the first time in 2010. It was a Wii port of the 5th game.
But it's a super niche game.
Yeah, so Sakura Wars is a RPG, visual novel, and dating sim hybrid. So it has all those elements combined into one game.
Oh, that sounds like a pretty, like, is it like a almost the same kind of vibe as like Persona and such?
Not really. It's definitely more focused on the visual novel segments than the RPG segments. I think that's the part that got me early was because of the heavy focus on the visual novel segments. That's what initially caused me to ask if I could rate the anime game out of 100 when I put it when I asked in our Slack. That because the first like first 2 or 3 hours of the game was the visual novel segment, and then you do a fight for like 15 minutes, and then you go back to the visual novel set as part of the game.
It sounds like an anime.
Yeah, that's what caused me to play it. And then of course the game is such a heavy emphasis on like almost like shonen anime tropes that's just what overwhelmed me in the first like few hours.
Is it tropey in a good way or a bad way?
In my opinion, in a good way. It's just very predictable, just because I've seen everything that would happen up to that point in the story. Like, you have they go against all odds, right? The one Sakura goes in solo and then just and manages to destroy all the enemies, and just she somehow manages to survive through the entire thing through plot armor, and she should have died like I feel like a couple times on mission. But yeah, so,
it's very handy armor.
Yeah, like I don't know how she still managed to get through the mission, because apparently her mech got disabled, but then she still came back and finished the mission. So I don't know like how that works, but
commitment and the power of friendship, maybe.
Power of friendship, and to see her, the captain comes in and saves her, and then she's like, "Oh yeah, let's just get right back in the mech and let's go."
Yeah, because I recall you saying at one point that the game, like, literally made you feel like you were in an anime, and I feel like any anime fan is like, man, I wish I could be in that anime.
Well, exactly. Like, are you on board with this game, Neal? Like, are you wanting to dive into Sakura Wars, knowing how heavily steeped it is in anime culture?
You know what? Having played more than my fair share of cheesy visual novels, I'd give it a shot, sure.
Yes, you certainly have, and bless you for it.
And also, through being part of RPG Fan and, being the person who's in touch with, like, developers, publishers, and, PR representatives, I'm privy to so many games that, like, would have otherwise flown completely under my radar. And while some of those, were terrible, a lot of them were like some really cool hidden treasures.
Mm-hmm. We've definitely had those. I mean, I've scooped a couple of them from you that I was like, oh, this totally wouldn't something Neal would have picked up, and then, oh, this is actually surprisingly a good time. Well, speaking of tropey visual novels, Wintermoor Tactics Club sounds like it should be like a very JRPG anime-inspired visual novel, but it very much is not, and it does have tactics in it. Neal, you picked up this one. Is it a straight up? It's an indie game, is it not?
Yes, it is.
From EVC, and that is coming out soon.
May 5th.
So yeah, how has that been stacking up? Because it looks really cool.
Yeah, you know what? And you know what? And my thoughts on this game tie into some of the things we've been discussing before. Because A, this was one of those games that I would not have known a darn thing about if it weren't for being part of RPG Fans. So it was one of those hidden treasures. And since we were talking with Nathan about how Sakura Wars made him feel like he was in an anime, this game, Wintermoor Tactics Club, it made me almost feel like I was in like one of those like Saturday morning cartoons that I used to watch as a kid.
And that's right. Is that simply because of like the style, or is that also fed in by like the writing style as well?
Yeah, definitely a bit of both. And each chapter almost feels like the beginning and end of like an episode and you would watch on TV.
Oh, that's a nice way to progress.
Yeah. Let me just give you the little quick and dirty on what Wintermoor Tactics Club is about, because This is a game no one's probably heard of. It takes place in a heavily fictionalized version of the 1980s, and
Which is like all the hotness right now.
and the setting is Wintermoor Academy, which is like this very exclusive boarding school. Think like Hogwarts, but without the spell casting. And so the character you play as is a girl named Alicia, who's an aspiring fantasy novelist, and she's a member of the school's tactics club, where she and her two friends, Colin and Jacob, play Curses and Catacombs, which is a tabletop game, kind of like Dungeons and Dragons.
Amazing.
Huh.
Yeah. So one day the club's playing, and then the principal makes an announcement. There's a huge assembly in the auditorium, and he says that all the school clubs have to participate in like a knockout snowball fight tournament. You know, the winners get to move on and be named the school's ultimate club. The losers have their clubs disbanded.
What?
And if you,
That
yeah,
seems
and
unfair.
if you don't participate, your club gets disbanded too.
Oh, I guess that's the best way to like reassess funding.
Yeah, right. So Alicia and the Tactics Club, they somehow, against all odds, win their first snowball fight, but Alicia's super conflicted about it because while she loves because she's a misfit at the school, and the club gives her a sense of belonging, and even though the club they beat were a bunch of mean-spirited Draco Malfoy type elitists, she realizes, hey, they were misfits too, and they needed their club for that sense of belonging. And so there's the two thrusts for the narrative is Alicia, fighting to, keep her club from getting disbanded, but also trying to figure out what's going on, because something is clearly rotten in Denmark here, and what is this crazy principal playing at with this snowball tournament and all that?
It makes me think of the opening of like Final Fantasy Tactics Advance when you have like the snowball fight tutorial.
But in any case, the game is a strategy RPG, but the marketing copy calls it a quote-unquote cozy strategy RPG.
Yeah, what's
and
with that?
Kind of felt cozy, but I think it's because it's a more it's not like a hardcore tactics game like, say, Fire Emblem or like a NIS
Tactics
thing,
Yeah.
or like Disgaea where there's like a cajillion stats, tons of menus. I mean, the combat is it's pretty accessible. Battlefields and parties are small, so battles occur fairly quickly. And while the default difficulty is skewed easy, there's multiple parameters, so you can kind of make things as easier or even more difficult as you want. And so it's like it's one of those things where it's fun and it's accessible for people who just want a casual experience, play for the story, but there's also enough depth for, people who want something a little chewier. Okay,
that's a good balance then. I like that.
Yeah.
Is there any voice acting in it, or is it just text-based?
It's text-based. There's no voice acting, but you know what? The music is actually pretty good, and I didn't miss the voice acting at all, because as I was reading, I could easily envision what, each of these characters would sound like.
Oh, no, and sometimes voice acting isn't necessary at all. I was just curious. Because sometimes, like, playing RPGs when I was a kid, like, obviously, the characters were in my head, and I would hear specific voices for them, and then when I think Final Fantasy IV's remake came out and I heard the voices, I was like, that's not Kane at all.
And I was going to ask you about the music. Like, stylistically, is it like your kind of standard RPG fantasy kind of ambiance, so to speak, or is it a little more unique? How much into like the quirky Saturday morning cartoon does it play?
See, the music is synth. Yeah, the synth-based music. Yeah, it definitely
Oh yeah,
touches.
that'd be 80s as heck. Yeah.
Yeah, so while like battle themes, especially when the club is, playing their tabletop RPG, are appropriately heroic. Um, in between battles, when Alicia's walking around the school, talking to people, doing side quests and all, the theme has more of that, like, as more of that, like, kind of homey school theme. Think something like the Balam Garden theme from Final Fantasy VIII.
Oh, nice.
And then, of course, when different characters have like their little different cutscenes, different music, different theme music plays for them. Like, as you said earlier, when you look at screenshots, you see different like clubs and stuff, and whenever you encounter members of those clubs, you'll get the little club theme music, and
that definitely helps to feed into the character, and I guess what you envision in your head for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, and I feel like just having the unique music for the club members, and also the fact that every character in the game, playable and non-playable, had their own like very unique sprite, unique body type, unique like hairstyle, even unique gait as they walked. It like there were no look-alike paper doll characters.
Which can be easy to phone in with, I guess, these kind of hand-drawn style games. Just to kind of cut some corners, they'll just kind of hand-draw a basic frame. So it's nice that they individually drew out everybody. That's pretty rad.
Yeah. It looks like a super diverse cast.
Oh, it definitely is. But, and even though the cast is, like, diverse, they don't try, it's never like, hey, look at me! I'm a this or I'm a that. It just is.
That's great. I like that more developers are trying to take that stance with just people are just people. You don't have to be like, oh look, there's the one lesbian. It's like that's not what defines them. Like they're just people who love and do what they do and look like they look. We don't have to have a token X character of skin color, orientation or whatever, right? That's great. Yeah. That's awesome to hear.
Exactly.
Well, that's good. I'm glad that diving into into this indie cache that we have paid off for you, because this game definitely looks wonderful, and it's got visual novel elements to it, because you've talked a bit more about the tactics situation. How much does that play up the visual novel aspect?
Well, you know what? Here's the thing. I mean, like you won't see any mechanics that are like your traditional visual novel, like where you have like the big portraits of characters talking to each other and then making choose your own adventure decisions. It feels more like, just like more like your average JRPG, really, where, like I said, between battles, Alicia will go around to the school, randomly like talk to people. Sometimes, they'll give her like side quests to do.
But there's no relationships to build or anything like that.
I mean, you know what? There definitely is, and because as new members join the club, Alicia has to write some like tabletop campaigns to try and help them with like some of their struggles, and doing that is interactive. Like, as she's writing a story, you're given choices of like, plot points that she puts in. And I thought that was cool. It felt like I was helping her like write the campaigns.
That's cool.
Oh, that's kind of cool then.
Yeah. But there's no like dating sim type stuff. Like you're not. No. So you're not. It's not like Wintermoor Harem Club or something like that.
Oh, not at all. Not at all. And because mostly it's just about, like kind of the theme of the game is just kind of just trying to, connect with people and build friendships, because, like I said, a big thing is that Alicia feels like she's a total misfit at the school, and it's through the snowball fight and through this tabletop RPG she's able to try and connect with other kids on campus and
Nice.
help them out. And
And this all gets built naturally just through the storytelling, less
Oh,
so
definitely.
through the player going out and pursuing the relationship, so to speak. Like,
Yeah.
they get developed, but if you didn't, there's no like mini game aspect to that.
yeah, not really. It's woven into the core gameplay.
Gotcha.
But like I said, I mean, one thing I like is that I was mentioning how a lot of strategy RPGs feel like overwhelming and not very accessible because they have like tons of menus and oodles of stats and all to keep track of. And you know what? The same could be said about tabletop RPGs because,
Yup.
I mean, I've met people who they said, I liked creating my character, but then it became a stat fest and then it felt like work. And so with this game, it made tactics gameplay and the concept of tabletop gaming seem like accessible and fun and not something that wouldn't be intimidating to get into. And I thought that was cool because, like I said, I mean, because tabletop gaming was, I'll admit it was kind of difficult for me to get into because math was never my strong subject. But playing like Wintermoor Tactics Club made me think, you know what? Maybe I might want to give that another chance.
Well, and all that's come so far too to be streamlined, so I definitely recommend you drive in and try out some 5e, maybe with your fellow RPG fan players who are here.
Especially now.
Yeah.
But that's good. This game sounds really rad, and I definitely want to check out your review at the very least because I'm really digging on the style. The art style looks captivating as heck.
How long's the time investment in it, if you don't mind me asking? Like, how big is the game?
It's not very long. It's only about like maybe 12 hours or so.
See, I love that. I mean, obviously we play RPGs which tend to be 120-hour epics, but sometimes you just want to sit down and enjoy a short story.
Right?
And yeah, I mean the entire narrative of the game only takes place over the course of maybe a week. So while you may not see like, oodles of like character development and all, I feel like you see a believable amount of growth. Like most of the characters kind of still stay within their archetypes, but they kind of grow in as much as you would expect someone to grow in about a week.
Yeah, it's an eventful week, but it's still a week.
Yeah, and like I said, there's a place for that in storytelling, like just to have that quick digestible thing like Jono was saying.
Yeah.
That's cool. I dig this. I'm into it. Speaking of, I guess, digestible, experiences, the opposite of which would be the Bravely Default series. Jono was talking about last time how he wrapped things up on Bravely Default, and, you got through the repetition and all that sort of stuff.
I actually loved it.
Right? Exactly. He is, seems like the minority in the opinion of it. But,
Very much so.
Yeah. But at any rate, you were starting out Bravely second. And,
Yes.
How's that been going so far?
I think I started up Bravely second like an hour before we recorded the last podcast, and I finished it an hour before we started this one.
Well, that's some good timing.
Yeah, it wasn't bad. I got in just under the wire. I mean, my impressions of it were they were positive. I don't think it's as good as the first game, and I think that's a fairly commonly held position here. But it's not bad by any stretch of the imagination. It feels much more
Still
like
good RPG.
It's still a very good RPG. Job system is fantastic. The art design is stunning. Music is great. Acting is very good too. The voice acting is very solid.
The first one had some good stuff too. It's good.
Yeah, and there's a lot of returning actors in this one as well. So I very much enjoyed it. My main criticism is that it did feel a bit like a expansion pack for the original game. Like, how when you played like Warcraft 3 or StarCraft, you get like the expansion pack after it, and it would have like a further campaign, but it would basically use all the same assets with a few extras. That's very much what this felt like. It felt like an expansion pack. And there's nothing wrong with an expansion pack.
No.
But that being said, I did find I had some problems with it. I didn't get into it as deeply as the first one. There were some tonal issues that were really strange in this game. There was, like the first game, there were some funny bits, but it took itself seriously. It was telling a serious story. And in this game, everyone seems just very flip about what's going on, and they're like it's not. There's no real time crunch. Like the first game, you constantly felt like you were under. The stakes are low, even though they're not. The stakes are quite high.
Is treating it like they're low.
Yeah, exactly, and it's a little weird. And I mean, one of the returning characters, Idia. I mean, she was my favorite character in the first game, and she's actually my favorite character in this one as well.
She's a delight.
Yeah, she is a delight. Murger. She's great, and she felt like this was her game. In fact, all the side quests used her as the main character, as the focal point of them, and I thought that was a really smart idea. But like another returning character, Tiz, kind of just felt like he was there. He just didn't feel like as well developed or as necessary as he was in the first game. Magnolia Arch is a great character. I really like her. Who's the protagonist in this game.
Me? I'm the protagonist?
They make a few jokes about that. It's YEW. What about you? He's a huge whiner, and he's kind of a coward, and he grows throughout the game and becomes braver and braver, and as he realizes hard truth. Yeah, exactly. As he realizes hard truth about his life and his family. There are times when I really liked him, and there were times when I was just like, ugh, just get Tiz back in the main role. There was also a tremendous amount of fourth wall breaking in this game. There was a little bit in the first game. In fact, there was a bit of a plot point, but it was like teased, kind of. But in this game, they bring in a lot more of our world, a lot more heavy references to the world we live in. And also, there were times... It was weird, and there was a section at the very beginning... This isn't a spoiler, because it was at the very beginning of the game. He's trying to get across a cavern, and there used to be a bridge there, but the bridge is out, and he's afraid of heights. So he turns to the camera and he says, "Oh no, the bridge is out. I guess I'll have to go through the forest instead." Very pleased with himself, and he addresses you addresses you, and it felt very much like a Guybrush Threepwood moment where he's kind of addressing the audience, and it just felt tonally shocking compared to the first game, especially considering I finished the first game and then I jumped straight into this.
Weird. And it wasn't just like there wasn't just the choice of camera direction or the acting where they just chose to face him out. Like you felt like he was actually looking right, quote unquote, into camera, so to speak.
Yeah.
To deliver. Weird.
To deliver. And I mean, that happens a few times in the game, and that actually plays into later plot points. Also, I felt this game was very beholden to the first game in the sense that the first game has a massive twist midway through. And it has this huge twist midway through, and it changes everything. And I personally think it's not just the repetition. It's also, characters turn out to have secret agendas and stuff, and you don't really see it coming. And then the whole title screen changes. And they did the exact same thing in this game. It's not the same twist, but there's a major twist. And at that moment, the title screen changes to something else.
They kind of just like M. Night Shyamalan did, whereas once there's a twist, then you're like, okay, when's the twist?
Yeah, the first game had little meta commentaries in it. This game is full out meta, the entire thing. And that's a perfectly legitimate choice for a game. I mean, it was very enjoyable, but coming from Bravely Default, tonally, it didn't match for me. It just didn't engage me the same way as the first one. And I mean, it also has the problem of Final Fantasy for the after years, where it's like you're catching up with these characters years later, and it's like, okay, what are they up to? And I mean, I liked it. I really liked it. If I might actually write a review on it, and it will get a good review. It won't be as good as the first one. But no, I enjoyed it. Glad I played it. I highly recommend if anyone out there is looking to the Bravely series and looking for a Final Fantasy style RPG, start with Bravely Default. And if you dig Bravely Default, continue into Bravely Second. You might really enjoy it.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's amusing with our talk of Bravely. It seems to bring listeners out of the woodwork. because we got another listener email actually on the subject of Bravely Default. Comes from Rawl, and just kind of paraphrasing, you kind of answered a bit of his questions, but one thing I guess I can get into, he was really curious with you finishing Bravely Default, and we did regale a bit how much we love it, and he agrees how much we love the fact that how the battle system kind of works out, the job system's awesome, and the ability to kind of customize the rate at which you get into random encounters and stuff, super dope. And as he said, and I'm kind of surprised too, like this, it's interesting that no other RPG has picked up on that yet. I mean, they have in some ways. Like I played Citizens of Space last year, which was definitely with its flaws, but one of the things that had the option to unlock the ability to turn off encounters. You could do that in like Final Fantasy VIII with a certain Guardian Force, for example. So that, I guess some of the games have it, but like it's just nice having it there it's just there, so you can turn it off and that's, I guess, speaks to the handheld nature of it. Like if you're on the bus and you're like, I just want to progress the story, I know my level's fine enough, I'm just going to skip the random encounters so I can run to the next town and see what happens before I get to work. Whereas conversely, you want to grind it out, then you amp up the encounter rate, and you just take 2 steps, fight, and before you know it, you've got $100,000 and tons of experience. So I think that's pretty rad, and it is surprising that it never made it into Octopath Traveler. Actually, it's one thing I never asked anybody about, is does Octopath have the customizable random encounter thing, which apparently it does not. So at any rate, he was curious if you, going right into Bravely Second, like, are you feeling fatigued by it? I mean, it sounds like you weren't, so to speak. It was mostly just the tonal shift that kind of set you off, but you were gung-ho all the way through?
Yeah. I mean, I understand what he means about being fatigued by it. I mean, sometimes you don't want to start an epic right after you finish an epic. But I was really digging the story. I was digging the characters and the world, and I wanted more of it. So I didn't feel fatigued going into it. I did get a little fatigued around the middle, because a lot of it, you're visiting the same places, you are running into a lot of the same characters. One thing I did appreciate about this game was how they expanded the world. Because one of the things I was afraid of is that you're just going to be revisiting all of the same towns. You're going to be revisiting all of the same dungeons, and you do.
Which is, I guess, why it feels like an expansion. Which Rawl said he also felt that it felt like an expansion. So it's interesting you both kind of use the same lingo.
Yeah, yeah, but at the same time, there are brand new towns. There are brand new dungeons. All of the I guess the antagonists from the first game reappear in a really interesting system where you are two of them meet, and you are confronted with a moral quandary where you have to pick one or the other. And
weird.
Yeah, and then whichever one you pick, you get their job, but you have to be selective.
Asterisks.
Yeah, they're asterisks. So you have to be selective about it. So you have to ask yourself, okay, do I want to be a red mage or do I want to be a thief? And later in the game, you have the opportunity to get whichever one you missed, but you're going to be playing the majority of the game with the jobs that you collect through the side quests. And I thought that was a neat system. Yeah, and I mean, I agree 100%. I'm a little surprised that more of the quality of life features haven't been adopted, especially in Octopath Traveler, because I really did like the fact that you could turn up or turn down the encounter rate. I also appreciated the auto combat, because that did make grinding a bit less of a headache.
Better than a stapler?
Better than a stapler. Although I did have to say that they changed the system a little bit. In the previous game, if you win multiple battles in a row, like if you, without being hit, for example, or you win multiple battles,
streaks.
You get the streaks, and that's how you really build up your experience and your job points and money. In this game, instead of using those streaks, you, at the end of the battle, are asked if you want to fight another battle immediately, and then you'll get the experience. You get the experience from both battles, but there'll be a multiplier on it. So the more battles you fight, the higher the multiplier, up to 3 times.
Nice. They did that in Citizens of Space, actually.
Yeah,
you had a chance to do that, and I thought that was kind of cool.
It is kind of cool. I will say that it does make grinding a lot easier, to the point where by the end of the game, I was level 99. I had a lot of jobs maxed out, and I wasn't even really trying. Which is, it's good, but it did make the last boss fairly trivial. And every boss up to that point. And I mean, I would like to see some of those features appear in other RPGs. Yeah, I think it did some pretty inventive things for a very traditional Final Fantasy style RPG.
They had to turn it on its head a bit, considering how honest an homage it was in so many ways.
Yeah, I'm excited to play. I'm going to play the demo of Bravely Default 2 now, which you played a few weeks ago. And I'm excited to see how they've evolved the system or how some of the things have gone back. I mean, I know you've had some criticisms, so I can't wait to see how it goes.
Yeah, it definitely feels very much the same as the first one, but I'd be interested to see how much it changes when you get the whole thing opened up, because that was the same thing I found with, like, so all I've done for Bravely Second is play the demo, and I found the demo, like, I didn't realize it was on a different, or on the same world, because they showcased in the demo of one new town. So I was like, okay, maybe it's a different place. And then they have like the kind of side mini game thing as well, where you can build up the moon or whatever it is.
Yes, La Lune.
La Lune, yes, where Magnolia's from or something, if I recall correctly.
That was actually a joke that I loved in it, where the language of the moon is French. And she she'll just speak French randomly, and everyone on the planet will be like, "What are you talking about?" And there's one villain from the first game who has a French accent, like a very stereotypical French accent, like that kind of thing.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and he's like talking, and she is like, "What accent is that? He's talking so weird. Why is he talking like that?"
I'm glad they picked up on that for the localization. I wonder what the hell that worked out in Japan.
I don't know, but it was
what the language was, or if that was just an English-only localization joke.
It worked out pretty well.
That's fun.
Yeah, this one felt. I mean, my last thought about this game, we might go into one of the other things he said in the letter, but this game felt much more episodic. We were talking about anime earlier, much more episodic than the first one, in the sense that they're divided into chapters, but at the beginning of every chapter, it replays the opening theme song movie. So it's very much like at the beginning of each chapter, you're watching the opening credits of this week's episode.
Oh, weird.
And there's like a theme song, and I was like, are they just going to show me the exact same movie every single time I finish a chapter? And yes, they are, because it's a Bravely Default game, and boy, do they love repetition.
No kidding. Well, it's kind of segues into the question that Raul left us with in his email, was asking the folks on the podcast, the panelists who've played or not, what you're hoping for from Bravely Default 2. And for me, I'm hoping that it isn't just more of the same, even though the demo has me, like I said, feeling a little leery that it could just be a more amped up version of the first one in a lot of ways, and just kind of more of that. It's going to be hard to iterate more, I guess, on the systems they already have in place, but yeah, maybe just a bigger world to explore, even though the world already felt pretty full. Some more interesting jobs. But yeah, I can't really, I don't know, I'm not really sure what I'd want from it, because I kind of don't mind having more of the same in some regards, but there's definitely got to be one or two new quality of life things, or something in the gameplay system that shifts it enough to make it still feel new. But that's going to be challenging for them, so I don't envy the task they have at hand.
Yeah, especially since, the series as a whole is very much rooted in being a traditional RPG, and, that's what, like, fans of the series kind of look for.
Well, exactly, and that's one thing Raul was saying about this one, is that he does hope that it doesn't wear its welcome out, because he found the Bravely Default and everything at 50 plus hours, there was a lot of padding. And I can kind of agree. I mean, again, people will say what they will or won't about the repetition.
A lot of games.
Yeah, exactly. And you try and stretch out a dungeon a bit too long, or try and add more narrative than is necessary, and it kind of runs out of steam, and then it just feels like you're just grinding for the sake of padding out the game.
Yeah.
You don't want that.
Exactly. I mean, it's like the music analogy I use all the time. Like, if you have like your favorite band, on the one hand, you don't want them to rehash the same album over and over again. But on the other hand, if they get too experimental, then the old fans will be like, you're not staying true to your roots.
Just look at Queen. Freddie Mercury.
Or Metallica.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah, but it goes it's the same thing for a song. I mean, there are some you ever listen to a song and you're like, wow, that's an amazing song. It would be a brilliant song if they cut one verse and one chorus.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Truth.
Like, a little too much. Nathan, I know you did Bravely Default and then you kind of fell off. Is there anything in Bravely Default 2 that they could do to kind of bring you back in, aside from, less repetition?
No, I think it's just the lesser repetition. I think that's about it. Like, because I generally enjoyed the battle system. I thought it was an amazing battle system, and the job classes were really good. Yeah, just don't repeat the story.
That's a fair point.
Just don't do that again.
Yeah.
What are you looking forward to in it, Jono?
I have a couple of ideas. I mean, I think I said last week that Bravely Default seems like their answer to Final Fantasy, whereas Octopath Traveler feels like their answer to the Saga games. I think they probably learned quite a bit from doing Octopath Traveler in a lot of ways, and I hope that they take some of those lessons and carry them into Bravely Default 2. I kind of agree about the repetition. I think that it's a little bit played out. If I was the developers, I would, because, I mean, like I said, the Bravely Default, Bravely Second are very much inspired by classic JRPGs. A lot of them from like the Super Nintendo era specifically. I might look at later entries of the Final Fantasy series and see some of the innovations that were there, and see if you can do your own takes of those things in this game. And I agree. I think the battle system is fantastic. Obviously, I think they should tweak it a little bit and play with it. The job system is great. I mean, I can't really... it's one of my favorite job systems I've ever used in an RPG, so I'm a big fan of that. I kind of hope they just go into a different world. I mean, I know that there's...
And it so far seems that's what's going on.
Yeah.
The demo.
And one of the things about the Bravely series is they do bring in the concept of other worlds, other planets. I mean, for gosh sake...
Other times.
It's very much it's a fantasy game, but it does have a few science fiction concepts. So it's not out of character that they could do a brand new story on a brand new planet and still maintain many of the concepts of Bravely Default and Bravely Second that were introduced.
Whatever links them together.
Yeah, the Celestial Realm and a few other things like that. They could still use the world building that they did in those two games without actually setting it in the same world. Like, as much as I like Tiz, and I'd love to see Adia again, I'd like to meet some new characters.
And you will.
And I will.
The demo, I'll be really excited to hear what you have to say about it.
I am excited to play it, and I will share my thoughts.
Well, to round out this thing, because we're getting to the end of the episode, one unifying thing that I've kind of been picking up from our conversations, there's been a lot of JRPG being thrown around here, a lot of games that have very heavily amped up anime tropes, so to speak. I mean, Trials of Mana has definitely turned that up. I mean, there's little bits of it in the SNES one, but I definitely find with the new acting and the voice acting, they can definitely play into a lot more of like the anime acting, so to speak. So it definitely feels much more JRPG even than the original did. And well, Sakura Wars, we know where that lands. And Bravely Default is definitely not innocent in the JRPG realm of having tropes and very tropey characters, especially in its character building between them, those little side moments as well.
Power of friendship, baby.
And you know what? And even Wintermoor Tactics Club, even though it's, by a Western developer,
a lot of Western
it's inspired by JRPG gameplay.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, and especially with the visual novel aspect of it, and yeah, it sounds like it. I mean, it's a school where there's fighting for amongst the clubs. It doesn't really get more JRPG than that in a lot of ways. And so, yeah, to that point, like, again, I can probably predict some of the answers here, but like, how much JRPG do you want in your RPG? How much anime do you like in your RPGs in general? I mean, obviously everyone has their tastes, and there's a lot of our fan base I know definitely heavily lean into the JRPG side of the genre.
Like they're fans or something.
Right? Almost. It's crazy that's why they're here. But no, and there's obviously a big voice for people who like the Western kind of trappings as well. And well, I guess what I'm trying to ask is just, how much is too much? Is there a right amount? Do you like seeing a blend of the two, like kind of like Wintermoor Tactics does, where they take their Japanese influences and bring those into the Western world, or would you rather just be straight up all anime all the time?
That's a difficult question to answer because I feel like I almost have to take that on a case by case basis depending on the game. Like,
yeah.
for example, if I were to play, say, an Idea Factory or Compile Heart game, then I would be disappointed if it toned down the fan service and the trophy stuff. if I'm playing a game by those developers, I want it as over the top anime tropey fan servicey as possible.
Bloody noses and people falling out of chairs everywhere.
That's what makes an Idea Factory or Compile Heart game Idea Factory and Compile Heart. So in that case, yes, I say bring on the over-the-top, ludicrous as possible anime stylings. But in other examples, it would feel out of place. Like, piggybacking on what Jono said about Bravely Default, where Bravely Second, went Deadpool and was breaking the fourth wall and stuff, and it was just, and it just felt like just tonally like different than what the series had kind of established. Then it's like, okay, then maybe something like that. Yeah, you do want to rein that back in.
Bravely Second doesn't so much break the fourth wall as it picks it up and whacks you over the head with it repeatedly.
Well, Nathan, you were one of the ones I was saying I could probably predict what your answer would be here, but prove me wrong.
Do I prove you wrong? Nah. Personally, for me, it depends. I like my anime, just, I think a lot of people know that, but in some cases,
It was almost a weird quote. I like my anime like I like my anime. Right? Anime.
I'm trying to, the gears are spinning in my head just really slowly right now. but
okay.
It has, for me, it's almost on a case-by-case basis, or it's either that or I need an adjustment period. So it's kind of like that with Sakura Wars, where, as mentioned, right off the bat, it kind of whacked me over the head instantly with the anime tropes and everything, in the first, 3 hours. So, and then it took an adjustment period for me to be like, okay, now we're when you get the super anime stuff, then I was kind of my mindset kind of changes, basically, on the fly. But normally it depends. When I go into as Neal mentioned, the Compile Heart Idea Factory games, I go into it expecting to be basically whacked over the head with anime tropes all the time. But if it's something Final Fantasy, which isn't which takes a lot. I don't want to say inspiration from Western anime, but stuff from Western games. But something like Final Fantasy were to go super anime, I don't know how that would sit with me. I think like I said, it's always just depends.
It's Chocobo's Dungeon might be the closest we get to that.
Yeah, or what's the other one? World of Final Fantasy.
World of Final Fantasy, yeah, it feels a bit more on the anime end, yeah.
And there are Final Fantasy games that are more anime than others, even in the main series.
It's true, but I still find, I think what Nathan is saying, they ride the line pretty well, where the tropes are usually it's usually like a gag here and there, but it definitely doesn't permeate the entire experience.
Yeah, every character they have their own archetype, but it's not so doesn't whack you over the head with it. It's saying oh yeah, they just constantly do things that are within the archetype. It's Final Fantasy characters are just they're just better at exploring more things about the character than just their tropes.
Right, absolutely.
Yeah, JRPGs in general and anime both kind of came from the same place, divergent. They're they diverge from the exact same place, which I believe would be manga.
Right.
Yeah, so there are obviously similarities between the two, and in some games it's very, very anime, and other times, a Western audience took that framework and ran with it, and you end up with a lot of Western RPGs.
Well, exactly, and that's where we got a lot of our inspiration, being Westerners, so to speak. For me, I Like I prefer my stuff to be better balanced. Like probably the most JRPG game I've played in a long time that felt almost too JRPG for me was Xenoblade Chronicles.
The original or two?
The original.
Okay, I guess two would probably be too much for you then.
Good to know. I still really want to play it. I mean, I don't like dislike them, but it definitely there's moments I was just like, oh my gosh, this is anime as heck. This villain, this ridiculous story plot device that I now need to swallow, this random chained god, whatever. Like, yeah, there's just moments I was just like, this is anime AF. Wow. And yeah, it borderlined it for me where I was just like, my suspension of disbelief is being tested. But as far as tropes and stuff go, it wasn't too guilty of that. And I'm not super down with that aspect of it. At least certain tropes are fine, like the comic gags and such, but some of like the more fan servicey tropes I can take or leave. And, you know, everyone has their taste, and that's totally fine. But yeah, I think that's more the extreme edge. So yeah, it's good to hear that Xenoblade Chronicles 2 may test me. But I'm open to it because it might just be that kind of fun-loving anime experience that, like you said, maybe I just need to let go a bit more. But Sakura Wars might be too much for me.
It was almost too much for me, and I quote myself as handling an incalculable amount of anime.
Yeah.
Like I can handle a lot of it, but Sakura Wars at the beginning was like, whoa, okay, this is testing me a little bit.
This anime goes up to 11.
Yeah, I think like up until now, like the most anime I had in my games until I started playing like Final Fantasy was like the anime character portrait package for XCOM Apocalypse that someone modded in way back when. So not much. Then Jono, you've been really enjoying Bravely, and that's definitely has its anime moments. So it's obviously not too much for you.
Not really. I mean, and to be completely honest, I've never really been able to get too much into anime. Oh my god, I can't believe I'm about to say this again. There were a very limited selection amount of animes at Abercrombie Video when I was growing up.
Yes, there it is!
So my exposure to it was very limited growing up, so I just don't think that it really hit my taste.
Resonates.
Yeah, I mean, obviously I watched Sailor Moon. But I mean, I think that the only two animes that I think they had were one called The Guyver and another one called Dominion Tank Police.
Also read.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so those are the only two
I've heard
animes
of
I
both.
watched like as a child growing up, and I guess my main exposure to anime tropes and things like that would have been through RPGs. Yeah, I'm fine with. There are various games, just like there's trash anime, there's brilliant anime, there are trash RPGs, there are brilliant RPGs, and trying to find that balance is what makes a great game.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much either way for entertaining that question. And hey, folks out there, you can entertain us with other questions. You can email us like Raul did at podcast@rpgfan.com. Raul, again, thank you so much for the email. It's really nice to hear from people. I'm happy to have emails all the time. And you can also find us on Twitter at podcast@rpgfan.com. I just said that. Shush. You can find us on Twitter and Instagram at rpgfancom. You can check us down on Facebook. You can find myself. I am G Delmy on our Discord, and I am Greg Delmage on Twitter and Instagram. Jono, folks can find you on the interwebs where?
They can find me on Twitter at Jono Logan.
And Neal, how can people talk to you unless they want to get us to review their game? They want to talk to you as a normal human.
Dincrest on the Discord.
And Nathan.
I am SmashKing27 on Twitter, and then on our Discord, I'm SmashKing.
And you can also listen to other podcasts that we have. We have Retro Encounter, hosted mostly by Solosi, but some other folks. I was on it not too long ago talking about Soul Blazer. We had some Near Talk not too long ago, talking about very poignant stuff at this point in time. The therapy through video games kind of idea. Mental health, very important to maintain in the current state of the world. And we also have Rhythm Encounter if you want to listen to some chill jams or rockin' battle themes. One of these days, hopefully we'll get some more stuff going through, but we've got a lot on the site in the back burner as it is to work on. And then, of course, we got Hat and Eric with Phoenix Edge, our affiliate podcast, where they keep up a bit more on current events than I do. But they're there, and they do a good job. And you can also watch their live stream of the show. It's a good time. Finally, Mike Solosi has started another podcast because obviously he didn't have enough going on already with podcasts and Retro Encounter, called Bravely Distance, which, he's just having chats with folks, how they're going through current things, what they're talking about. It's not all RPG centric, so it's a little more general, but still, he started that up. I think it's a good project. Go check it out. Give him some listens. And otherwise, thanks for being here with us, everybody. Jono, Nathan, Neal, thank you so much for being on the episode, guys.
Oh, thanks for having me.
As always, a pleasure.
Yeah, you're welcome back. Don't be such a stranger, Neal. And otherwise, for all of y'all, thanks so much. I'm Greg Delmage. Goodbye.